This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. Absolutely delighted to be joined by Mr. Bob ARUM, all the way in Las Vegas. Bob, how are you?
Good, really good. We did our first show last night, and now I go home, have a meal, go into the bubble again. I got to take another test. I'll have more coronavirus tests than anybody going because I don't like to stay in the bubble after the show. I got to come out, and then I go back in. So it'll be my second coronavirus test of the week.
Wow. So, Bob, yeah, just kind of touching on yesterday, and it was brilliant to see Top Rank putting on boxing. We've been starved of it all around the world, and obviously you guys were the first ones really to bring it back yesterday. So would you say yesterday was an overall success, Bob?
Well, it was great promotion, great production by ESPN. Obviously, the fights lacked some drama because it's very, very hard when we started out now because our kids, the fighters signed to Top Rank, stayed in shape, found gyms to work out, and were in peak condition or good condition. The opponents that we got for them haven't had or didn't have an opportunity to go to gyms. They were all closed. So it was difficult. Now, as the weeks go on, it'll level out. And what we started to do is tomorrow getting some fights between our fighters who we know have been in camp. We also started realizing that we were limiting it to 5 or 6 fights, and the tendency is you're going to lose a fight because somebody tests positive for coronavirus. Like the women's fight that we lost last night, Michaela Mayer is a terrific fighter, a former U.S. Olympian. She was in great shape, felt great, took the test, and lo and behold, she tested positive. Now, and she showed no symptoms. Now, 2 days later, when they interviewed her, she was already home in quarantine. She said she still hasn't any symptoms. So apparently people can get this and not only initially show no symptoms, but never show any type of the virus affecting them in any way. We'll have Michaela back in July, but I mean, it was a shame that she couldn't fight on the inaugural show because she was the semi-wind-up.
With the amount of testing going on, Bob, I suppose I can't imagine how many tests that you're actually doing in order to make the show work, but it's going to happen, and you can't rule it out from someone failing a test or testing positive for coronavirus in the future either, Bob, can you?
No, I mean, and it's not like the virus, I mean, the testing is inexpensive. It's fairly expensive. We estimate it's costing us just the testing between $25,000 and $30,000 each show.
Wow.
We can't expect the government to pay for it. We wanted this testing. We set up a separate facility for the testing, and it's very costly, as is the whole bubble thing. We put these fighters up, everybody, the corner people on the floor, the camera people, they're in the bubble. They go downstairs with security on a separate elevator just for the people on the bubble floor. And they get downstairs and security then takes them about 10-minute walk to a van that takes them to the convention area. They get to the convention area. There's a big dining room where they can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Next to the ballroom which is set up for the fights, there are two fully equipped gymnasiums, one for the red corner, one for the blue corner, so the guys can shake out in the course of a day. I mean, this is like a real undertaking. It's not easy. You know, the idea of, hey, put the fight on, no spectators, put it in your garden, and, you know, just do the fight. You know? I mean, it is very, very, very complicated.
And that's expected, isn't it? I mean, we're still in this situation. We don't know when things are going to go back to normal. So this is how boxing is going to be for the foreseeable future.
Well, certainly for the next 3 months. We're planning this June, July, 2 and 3 events a week, maybe fewer in August because the basketball should be back, maybe baseball. So for the summer, we expect to do it. Hopefully, by September, October, we get to the second phase where we can do these events in arenas with limited number of spectators and not the same type of testing and so forth that we do now. I don't know. And then finally, the fourth quarter, certainly November, December, hopefully we can go back to doing events with full spectators. I mean, that's aspirational. I have no inside knowledge, but I hope that to be the fact. And by next year, God willing, we'll have a vaccine, and this will all be behind us.
We certainly hope so. Right, Bob. Obviously, I want to talk to you about some huge news. Obviously, that came through today regarding where Joshua and Fury are at the moment in regards to potentially their 2 fights next year. Now, Tyson Fury released on his Instagram today, and obviously I've spoken to Eddie Hearn that the financial terms for these 2 fights have been agreed. Tyson Fury took it to his Instagram to give credit to Daniel Kinahan for getting this part of the deal over the line. So could you make some comment on that, Bob, please?
Well, KUGAN, if you want something that masquerading as news and really isn't news, it's this. About 4 weeks ago, in discussing the possibility of a Fury-Joshua fight, we all agreed that the best way to do it would be 2 fights. First fight, 50-50, and the second fight, 60-40, 60 to the winner of the first fight. That was agreed a month ago. That isn't news, in my opinion, because it's logical that they're going to fight each other if they get by obstacles in their path this year. There is no other agreement on anything, not who the television people are going to be, not the other elements you have in a fight. Will there be agreement? Yes, if it turns out to be what Eddie Hearn hopes, that his guy beats my guy PULEV, which I'm telling you, I don't believe is going to happen. I think PULEV is going to knock Joshua out, and so all of this goes by the wayside. What was left out in Eddie's statement was the fact that, at least on our side, that Fury has an obligation to fight Wilder, and that we're going to do the fight this year. And Tyson, to his credit, when he talked about this 2-fight deal, said that there's an obstacle, and that is the bronze bomber, Deontay Wilder, and he expects to do that fight by the end of this year and has to beat Wilder to go into a Joshua fight. So again, it's nothing with nothing. A lot of issues remain to be resolved. Television carrier. Who is going to do the pay-per-view in the UK? Is it going to be Sky, or is it going to be BT? Or both? I don't know. In the US, the pay-per-view would have to be ESPN. Now, if the Zone wants to sell the pay-per-view, I assume an accommodation could be made that people would buy it on the Zone platform, but that makes very little sense because the Zone is minuscule compared to ESPN. So a lot of issues have to be worked out. The site, who knows where the site's going to be? All of this talk about the Saudi money, the Bahrain money, the Qatar money is all talk. Is all talk. Who knows who's coming up with money? Who knows what the situation is in those countries sometime next year? Will they still be under lockdown? Will they allow crowds full capacity in their arenas? We don't know any of that, KUGAN. That's why I don't look at what Eddie said, and I love Eddie dearly, really. Even though I criticize him a lot, I consider him a good guy. I mean, what Eddie said today really shouldn't pass as news.
Bob, can you explain to me what part or what role that Daniel Kinahan has had in whatever's been agreed so far?
You have to understand Dan's role. Dan is an advisor of Top Rank. He's advised us in the Fury situation. He's advised us on a number of matters. We consider himself the honest advisor. He's also Tyson Fury's advisor. Done a great job talking to Tyson, leading him in the right direction. As the advisor for Top Rank and Tyson Fury, he interacts with Eddie Hearn and with Frank Warren. Hearn and Warren don't get along. That's really not, understatement. So Dan has been instrumental in brokering a sort of peace between Eddie and Frank, which lasts as long as the next phone call. But essentially, Dan's role has been very, very good because it has helped to keep us at Top Rank on the right track, and Fury as well on the right track.
Okay, so we know obviously, from this, what you're saying that it isn't news, but from the news, shall we say, that was coming out today, no location, no venue, no broadcast deal, and obviously 2 fights have to happen. But people would say like the financial element of that is probably the most difficult to negotiate. Is that fair to say?
Negotiate about, well, how difficult is a 50-50, 60-40? Takes half an hour to negotiate that, right? And there was a template for that, and that was the Wilder Fury fight. That's exactly what the Wilder Fury situation was. After the first fight was a draw, the parties got together, and that's what they agreed on: 50-50, 60-40 for the winner of the second fight. And that didn't take all the time. What took the time was who would do what and how we would interface with each other, PBC and Top Rank, and all of that worked out splendidly. But again, that's where we get to time-consuming matters, when we get to the nitty-gritty, that makes a fight work.
Do you have any doubt whatsoever that the Fury fight with Wilder, the third fight, will happen this year?
Listen, if this were ordinary times, I would have absolutely no doubt. Who knows what's going to happen now if the pandemic kicks up in October? People say, and everybody goes back into their holes, so to speak, not to get bitten by the virus. But assuming that we have some relief in that regard, I believe the fight would happen. I believe and the fight would happen essentially, as I see it now, in three possible locations. First and primary is that it take place in Las Vegas in a setup where we can do it in a big stadium, perhaps even the football stadium, the new $2 billion Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, the home of the Las Vegas Raiders football team. That's magnificent, and do it that seats 65,000 in the stands, but now you have the field, and do it for 35,000 people. That's first choice. That is a possibility, except I have no control about what happens with this pandemic, and if it gets worse and the governor and the authorities go back into lockdown. You understand?
Yeah.
I have no control over that. The second possibility, because they've had so little incidence of the coronavirus, is Macau. Now, we have a history of doing fights in Macau. You can do them on a Sunday morning, like we did with Pacquiao fight, Saturday night back prime time in the United States. It may very well be that Macau is ready for a fight in a full stadium. We're looking at a stadium that's neutral, not owned by one or the other of the properties, of 11,000. All the 6 major properties in Macau all have agreed to participate in putting that fight on in the latter 2 months of this year. The question is, will the authorities allow the border to have testing and so forth, so people can come into Macau, more people than come in now? And secondly, will the authorities allow a sporting event in a full arena? That's what we're working on now, and we hope to get an answer maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks. The third possibility is do the fight on a Sunday around noon in New Zealand or Australia, both of which have a big expat UK people who live in Australia, in New Zealand. Now the question there is, will they allow a sporting event full, spectators? New Zealand has already answered that, yes. This weekend, they're doing a football game in New Zealand, no limit on the number of spectators. In Australia, there's still a limit, but they say that by November, December, the limit will be gone, right? Now, the problem in Australia and New Zealand is if you go over there, there's a 14-day quarantine. Imagine telling Tyson, you come over, fly over to Australia, we'll put you in your hotel room for 14 days doing nothing while you're in quarantine. You tell him that. I'm not going to tell him that, right? So there's where we are. I mean, here's where we are. These are not boxing questions. We're living in a world that is going half mad, and we have to, really make our plans accordingly. I'm optimistic, though, that we'll either do that fight in Macau or in Las Vegas.
Okay. Bob, just finally, I know we're a little bit limited on time here, but what can you tell us about the situation regarding Joshua and PULEV and the location for that? Obviously, I spoke to Eddie about that a little bit, but what can you tell us from your side?
I said, Eddie, pick a date, get a date where you think you'll be able to get limited number of spectators, say in Royal Albert Hall. And Eddie's idea, which was a good one, was I would do it for limited number of spectators, charge big prices, serve a dinner, serve free drinks and so forth, so there's no concessions, people, and for 1,500, 2,000 people in the Royal Albert Hall. That's aspirational, but that's the way it will get done, because it will, I think, you'll be ready in the UK to do that in September or October. And Eddie's looking into that. I think he may make an announcement. He's the lead promoter about that fight and when he plans to hold.
Okay, just a quick one. Lopez, Lomachenko, and also Inoue as well. When are you hopeful to get them that fight and Inoue out as well?
We're looking at September. We believe now. Again, I don't make this policy. We believe that by September we'll be in the second phase, which means that we can do for example, an event in the Grand Garden Arena, which holds 15,000, and they will allow us to do it for 2,500, 3,000 people. Charge nice prices, fairly high prices, feed everybody meals, give them free drinks, make it a real event, and get the fights on. And we would do it in the United States on pay-per-view. We've talked to ESPN about that. I think they're on board. The same thing for a number of fights. Inoue, Casimero. That's how we would do that fight in September, because a lot of Japanese Americans want to go and watch Inoue fight. And by that time, hopefully, there'll be some tourists back to Vegas from Japan. And that's when we plan to do that fight. So I think we'll begin to see an opening September, October, where we can do limited seating and get these fights on. But we talked with both Lomachenko and Lopez as recently as a few days ago. They don't want interim fights, and they want to go at each other, and hopefully we'll get it done in September.
When do you think that media will be allowed at your events, Bob?
We're looking into that. We only allowed, Kevin Iole came in of Yahoo, was there last night, and the New York Times had a reporter there and a photographer, because that's important. There'll be a big spread on how you do it with testing and everything. So we thought that was good for the public. I think next week we'll have a limited number of media allowed in. And as we get the hang of this testing and so forth, we'll increase the media. Will we ever get to a point where we'll be 30, 40 media people? Absolutely not. But we're going to start bringing in certain media from big outlets as early as next week.
So if I wanted to come, you'd let me come, Bob?
You're special. You could come now, even when we don't consider you media. We consider you a friend.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Well, soon as I'm allowed to travel anywhere, I'll be on a plane. Trust me. Bob, thank you very much for your time. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get another update with you when there's more news or not news or whatever. So yeah, keep yourself safe, and we'll definitely catch up soon.
Anyway, this Zoom thing is great, right?
Yeah, you're a pro at it now. You're a pro at it now.
Yeah. Good talking to you.
Thank you very much, Bob Arum.
See you.